Hi, everyone. My name is Dr. Courtney Hayes, and I am a Hispanic international educator and researcher. Years ago, when I first began a new position teaching kindergarten in Madrid, Spain, I stepped into my classroom for the first time, and being the book lover that I am, I ran to my classroom library to explore the shelves and discover all of the amazing books that were waiting for me. But within the first few minutes, I began to realize that none of the books that were on the shelves were representative of the children who would be walking through my classroom door a couple of weeks later, and my heart sank. It left me feeling overwhelmed and constantly wondering, how do I select meaningful and representative literature for my classroom? Take a few minutes to pause and think about how you might go about selecting representative books for your classroom library. Now that you've had a moment to think, I'm sure that we all have different and wonderful strategies that we can use in selecting books for our students. But as a new teacher facing an unexpected problem, I simply didn't know where to start, and I felt truly overwhelmed. Luckily, I've learned a lot about children's literature since that challenge was first presented to me in my early years of teaching. And if you ever find yourself in a similar situation, here's some advice that I've learned over the years. First, one of my favorite literacy advocates, Rudine Sims Bishop, who you might have heard in many of your courses, she once compared children's literature to mirrors, windows, and sliding glass doors. And what she meant is that meaningful books can serve as mirrors that allow children to see themselves reflected within the story. They can serve as windows, allowing children to peer into the world of others. And they can serve as sliding glass doors, meaning that children can open the door, step into another culture, and take on the identity of another, living vicariously through that character. When you're trying to select meaningful and representative literature for your classroom, keep the idea of mirrors, windows, and sliding glass doors in mind. Give plenty of opportunities for all students to experience all of these examples within these books. My next piece of advice is that when you're finally ready to select books, one of the most important first steps is to get to know your students. Often, student demographics are identified by very general groups within education, such as a Hispanic student, white students, Asian students, African American students, you name it. And yet, as we all know, these groups are not monoliths. We're not all the same. And so, while these categories don't capture the nuances of us or our rich backgrounds and cultural capital that your students might bring with them into the classroom each day, they might give you a starting point for considering what kinds of subgroups might I want to try to represent within my literature also. As you get to know your students, invite them to share as much as they are comfortable about their home countries, their home languages, and their favorite cultural traditions. And that'll give you a little bit more of a narrow lens to be able to know what types of books they might appreciate the most. And it'll also give you a great starting place in pulling children's literature that highlights their unique experiences as well. Once you have an idea of the cultural groups that you'd like to highlight within literature for your classroom, you're ready to start researching titles. School and community library catalogs, as well as web resources like Goodreads and Amazon, are often the first places that many educators start. However, there are many websites available today that feature lots of wonderful titles for children from many different kinds of representation, including the website called Worlds of Words, which has culturally themed book lists, A Mighty Girl, which curates books for fostering courageous girls and female figures, and social justice books. If you're looking for social justice oriented texts, Social Justice Books is a great web resource to start with. While there are certainly many diverse choices available today, be sure to also consider the authenticity of these titles. Are the characters within these books positively portrayed? Was the book written by or in collaboration with someone that's directly from that cultural community? Have you considered various types of diversity beyond ethnicity or race, including characters with varying abilities, immigrants and refugees, or those who might be LGBTQ+? Considering titles from a critical perspective for authenticity not only ensures an equitable classroom by minimizing stereotypes and celebrating diversity, but it also gives you a good conversation piece with students to kind of assess, is this accurate? Is this not? What would you change about this story? Using resources like the one I mentioned earlier for socialjusticebooks.org will also give you information on recommended and not recommended books that kind of fit those ideas that we're trying to think about when we think about authenticity. In addition, try to reach beyond books that feature animal characters if you already have many of those books within your classroom, which we quite often do. While books with animal characters are very useful in allowing all students to write themselves into the story and envision themselves as the character, when we overuse them, it really limits opportunities for students from different backgrounds to see themselves positively represented in the story. So if you can ever find one that has a similar theme or offers similar opportunities for them to practice a certain reading strategy, go for that book before you go for the animal text whenever possible. We want to provide those mirrors, windows, and sliding glass doors as much as we can. And then lastly, one of the best ways to select meaningful and representative books is to just get out there and explore. Go explore your local library for new releases and ask the librarians about new pieces of diverse literature that they've gotten in. I do that all the time, and I can tell you that librarians typically love that because they spend so much time curating these beautiful books for children. It means so much to them to be able to share their enthusiasm about it with another adult. I also love to skim the aisles of Target or Barnes and Noble just to see what's new, see what has come out from authors that I've previously loved. You never know when your favorite author is going to release the next new thing, and you've had no idea that they were even working on that. You can also scroll through publishers on Instagram. It's another one of my favorite things to do. It gives you a sneak peek again at new releases, but it's also awesome when they offer author highlights where they share a little bit about their background. Sometimes they'll offer snippets from an interview, or they'll post information about a webinar that that author might be giving to do a book talk about the book or do a book club discussion. And those are often good opportunities that you might be happy to attend and you wouldn't have known about otherwise. So Instagram in real time is a really helpful tool for children's literature. You can also leverage things like Amazon. And while we love to buy from independent bookstores, one resource that Amazon does offer is being able to compare similar titles. So if you have one book that you really love, you can see what else is being offered around the similar theme or genre as well. Throughout the year, be sure to create a wish list of new books that you'd love for your classroom and make it available to parents. They'll sometimes ask, what is it that you need? What is it that the kids would really love to have? And that way you always have it on hand. You can send it to them in real time. And they can see the evidence of all the wonderful things that you're doing from that wish list when their child comes home and says, Mr. and Mrs. So-and-so read this at school today, or we really love this book that this person read. It's just a wonderful way to open up communication with families as well. Lastly, consider the fact that even experts on children's books are always discovering something new. So no matter what works for you, just keep your finger on the pulse of diverse literature, see what's coming out. Be brave and bold in searching for some of your titles, and don't be afraid to ask students, what book do you really love, and see which ones they gravitate toward as well. All of these options will ensure that you have the books that serve as mirrors, windows, and sliding glass doors for all of your students, and the books that you all deserve to have.